Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be talking about the beginning of the Civil War, and this is probably going to be a long couple of videos, so let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start off by talking about the raid on Harper's Ferry. Both Lincoln and Douglas believed that the slavery crisis had to be resolved within the framework of the nation's laws. Abolitionist John Brown felt no such constraints, and Brown viewed himself as an angel of God avenging the evil of slavery. Even before one of his sons was killed in Bleeding, Kansas, he had concluded that violence was the best way to reach his goal. By late 1857, Brown had begun planning his attack. For many months, he crisscrossed New England, the Midwest, and Canada, soliciting recruits and funds to mount an armed assault on slavery. Capture at the Arsenal. By the fall of 1859, Brown was ready. "Men, get your arms," he cried. "We will proceed to the ferry." Gathering his following of 21 men, including 5 free African Americans, Brown set out to seize the federal arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, now in West Virginia. He hoped to inspire local slaves to join a revolution that would destroy slavery in the South. Brown had chosen Harper's Ferry because it was a hub of trains and canals, which would offer efficient escape routes. This locale was also near the borders of Pennsylvania, a free state, and Maryland, where there were many free African Americans. It seemed the ideal launching point. This is a picture of Harper's Ferry. I've actually been to Harper's Ferry in the past, and this is a picture showing, I wanted to show like the rivers and the bridges and all of that, just to give you an idea of how the land lays at Harper's Ferry. But the effort failed. Few Americans, black or white, were prepared to join a rebellion organized by this intense, fanatical white man. Frederick Douglass, a close friend, refused to join, warning Brown that his mission would array the whole country against us. A few African American and white abolitionists sent money for guns, but in the end, Brown's revolution came to naught. Local residents surrounded Brown's men in the arsenal, and federal troops soon arrived to arrest them. 2 more of Brown's sons were killed in the fray, but a few of the rebels escaped to Canada. Brown and several others, however, went to the gallows. This is a picture of the building that it happened in, and as a result of it, they were arrested, and Brown and several of his followers went to the gallows. If you don't know what the gallows are, that's where they hang people. So Brown was hung for this. Brown's execution. Brown's attack increased the heat in already boiling tempers. Similar to the Dred Scott decision, suspicion and rumors were widespread. Stephen Douglas accused the Republicans of instigating Brown's attack, and Southern congressmen demanded an investigation. But when Abraham Lincoln and other Republicans condemned Brown, the rumors subsided. Yet many congressmen still came armed to the Capitol. The uncertainty caused a steep drop in cotton prices, and many Southerners prepared for war. Many Northerners thought abolitionist activism had gone too far, but others now saw Brown as a courageous martyr. They were moved to tears when he proclaimed his willingness to mingle my blood with the blood of my children and with the blood of millions in this slave country whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments. Some admirers suggested that Brown should be buried at Boston's Bunker Hill, next to the heroes of the American Revolution. A popular song later immortalized him, celebrating the fact that his soul goes marching on. On the morning of his execution, Brown made the prophetic prediction that the crimes of slavery of this guilty land will never be purged away without very much bloodshed. Many Americans agreed with him. Sectional politics in the election of 1860. Despite repeated attempts at compromise, disagreement between the North and the South over the issue of slavery continued to deepen. With the election of the Republican President Abraham Lincoln in 1860, the crisis came to a head. The Union of States that had been formed less than 100 years before was about to dissolve. A poster warns Boston's African Americans about the Fugitive Slave Act. Northern anger over this law continued throughout the 1850s and influenced public opinion in the election of 1860. So here's a poster that went around Boston, It says here, "Caution, colored people of Boston, one and all. You are hereby respectfully cautioned and advised to avoid conversing with the watchmen and police officers of Boston. For since the recent order of the mayor and aldermen, they are empowered to act as kidnappers and slave catchers. And they have already been actually employed in kidnapping, catching, and keeping slaves. Therefore, if you value your liberty and the welfare of the fugitives among you, shun them in every possible manner, as so many hounds on the track of the most unfortunate of your race. Keep a sharp lookout for kidnappers and have top eye open." April 24th, 1851. So that poster just goes to show that even though the official and legal thing to do was to catch runaway slaves and send them back, there was organized resistance to this. John Brown's raid and execution were still fresh in the minds of Americans as the 1860 presidential election approached. Uncertainty about Kansas. Would it be a slave state or a free state? Added to the anxiety. In the North, loss of confidence in the Supreme Court resulting from the Dred Scott decision and rage about the Fugitive Slave Act's intrusion into the state's independence further aggravated the situation. The issue of states' rights was on Southern minds as well. Would Northern radicals conspire to eliminate slavery not only in the territories, but also in the original Southern states? In the spring of 1860, Mississippi Senator Jefferson Davis convinced Congress to adopt resolutions restricting federal control over slavery in the territories. The resolutions also asserted that the Constitution prohibited Congress or any state from interfering with slavery in the states where it already existed. Even Southerners who did not own slaves felt that their way of life and their honor were under attack. With ill will running so deep, the upcoming elections posed a serious dilemma. It was hard to imagine that either Northerners or Southerners would accept a president from the other region. Could the Union survive? Now, this man here, Jefferson Davis, keep him in mind. He is going to be coming back. He is going to play a very important role coming up. Democrats split between two nominees. The Democrats held their nominating convention in Charleston, South Carolina. For 10 days, they argued about the issue that had plagued the nation for decades, slavery. The Southern Democrats called for a platform supporting federal protection of slavery in the territories. The Northern Democrats, who backed Stephen Douglas, supported the doctrine of popular sovereignty. When the Douglas forces prevailed, the delegates from 8 Southern states walked out and formed a separate convention. The Democrats were now split into two parties. The Northern Democrats nominated Stephen Douglas. The Southern Democrats nominated the Vice President, John C. Breckinridge of Kentucky. Breckinridge was committed to expanding slavery into the territories. So, we have here two nominees that are both backed by the Democrats. They have divided. We have a northern band of Democrats and a southern band of Democrats, both supporting their nominee and not the other one. And any time that this happens, any time that there are two presidential candidates that are both supported by different factions of the same party, neither will get elected. Every time. The Constitutional Union Party. In the meantime, the few remaining Whigs teamed up with the Know-Nothings to form the Constitutional Union Party, another one of these third parties that popped up throughout history. They hoped to heal the split between the North and South. Their candidate was John Bell, a little-known moderate from Tennessee. Their platform condemned sectional parties and promised to uphold the Constitution of the country, the union of the states, and the enforcement of the laws. So, this Constitutional Union Party, their goal was to try to heal the nation and bring everybody back together and essentially try to prevent the Civil War from happening. But we all know what eventually happens here. The Republican nominee. The Republicans, who had gained great strength from their formation, held their nominating convention in Chicago. After several ballots, they nominated Abraham Lincoln as their candidate. When the party convened, seasoned politician William H. Seward of New York had been the favorite to win the nomination. But when many delegates began to worry that Seward's anti-slavery views were too radical, the convention went with the more moderate Lincoln. Lincoln wins without the South. Benefiting from the fracturing among the other political parties, Lincoln won the election handily, with 40% of the popular vote and almost 60% of the electoral vote. Still, he did not receive a single Southern electoral vote. In fact, he was not even on the ballot in most Southern states. Breckinridge was the clear favorite among Southern voters, carrying every cotton state, along with North Carolina, Delaware, and Maryland. The border states of Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, whose economic interests were not as closely tied to slavery as the cotton states were, gave their votes to Bell. Stephen A. Douglas, although running second to Lincoln in the popular vote, won only in Missouri and New Jersey. So Lincoln wins this election hands down. There were so many other candidates and all the other parties that split their vote that whenever he won by a very wide margin. So there was no question that Lincoln was the winner here. But an interesting thing here, and I'll show you on this map, Lincoln wins without taking a single Southern state. No Southern states, and you can see on this map here, none of the states that would eventually become part of the Confederacy go to Lincoln, but he wins anyway, just due to the way the population works. The election of 1860 demonstrated what Americans' worst fears had come to pass. There were no longer any national political parties. Bell and Breckinridge competed for Southern votes, while Douglas and Lincoln competed in the North and the West. The North and the South were now effectively two political entities, and there seemed no way to bridge the gap. Here's another map that kind of shows how the votes went. The states that are colored in green are Abraham Lincoln votes. So, as you can see, he takes all of the northern states, and he takes Oregon and California. John Breckinridge takes all of the southern states. All of the southern states. He's yellow, so all the southern states go to John Breckinridge. The blue states are Stephen Douglas, where he takes Missouri and something else. another small state, because he only gets 12 electoral votes and Missouri had 9 here. And then John Bell, the Constitutional Union Party, he takes Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So none of the southern states vote for Lincoln. He wins anyway. So, and it's a clear vote, and it's a clear win. If you look at the electoral votes here, Abraham Lincoln gets 180 electoral votes, whereas John Breckinridge gets 72. He was the second, so Lincoln wins, has over 100 electoral votes over John Breckinridge. So it's not even a close call at all here. The collapse of the Union. Southerners were outraged that a president could be elected without a single Southern vote. In the Southerners' perception, the South no longer had a voice in the national government, and they decided to act. Southern states secede. As soon as Lincoln's election was confirmed, the South Carolina legislature summoned a state convention. Meeting in Charleston on December 20th, 1860, and without a dissenting vote, the convention declared that the union now subsisting between South Carolina and the other states under the name of the United States of America is hereby dissolved. They cited as their reason for seceding the election of a president whose opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery. So I'm going to stop right here for a second because I want to make one thing abundantly clear. There are people who, to this day, want to have a discussion about what caused the Civil War. Now, without seceding from the Union, the Civil War would never have happened, because we would have just been one country. You can't have a civil war if there's no two sides. South Carolina is the first to secede, and as their reason for seceding, the election of a president whose opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery. Slavery is the reason for the Civil War. There are people who want to say, oh, well, it's this, it's that. It's the most common thing I hear is states' rights. Okay? States' rights to do what? To have slaves. No. Slavery is the main reason for the Civil War. Now, there are other things to much lower, much less of a degree. The main central reason for the Civil War is slavery. Period. On the 4th of March next, a new administration will take possession of the government. It has announced that a war must be waged against slavery until it shall cease throughout the United States. The guarantees of the Constitution will then no longer exist. The equal rights of the states will be lost. The slave-holding states will no longer have the power of self-government or self-protection, and the federal government will have become their enemy. This is from the Declaration of the Immediate Causes which induce and justify the secession of South Carolina from the Federal Union, December 20th, 1860. So here's a direct quote from the document that was written that declared secession of South Carolina. And right in it, a war must be waged against slavery until it shall cease throughout the United States. Once again, slavery brought up over and over and over again. Slavery is the reason for the Civil War. In the next few weeks, 6 other states of the Deep South seceded from the Union. Sentiments favoring secession were not always unanimous, with the gravest doubts surfacing in Georgia. State Senator Alexander H. Stephens, though alarmed by Lincoln's election, was devoted to the union of states under the Constitution. This government of our fathers, with all of its defects, comes nearer the objects of all good government than any other on the face of the earth, he said. But Georgia voted to secede anyway. Like delegates in the other slave-dependent cotton-growing states, they believed they had to take this step to protect their property and way of life. Okay guys, I know this has been a long video, so I'm going to end it here. If you have any questions about anything we've gone over today, you know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you again real soon.